Welcome back to another episode of Build IT Better. My name is Morgan Worrell. I'm a senior software engineer at this dot, and we'll be discussing PWAs in this Build It Better program. Starting with our lovely guest today, Kenneth. Can you give us a little bit of a background about you, and we'll just continue round robin this way?
Yeah, I'll try to make it short. I work for a company called Intel. So it's a semiconductor, but I work on the software side of things, like leading our web platform team and looking at strategy and what we should be doing. Before this, I worked at Nokia. I built web browsers, so I also work on Chrome. And I've been involved more and more in standards, including standards such as Web App Manifest used by Progressive Web Apps. And I'm also an elected member of the technical architecture group for the W3C, and the W3C being the World Wide Web Consortium, one of the organizations standardizing the web.
That is amazing. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Adriana.
I'm a developer relations engineer at Google. I actually just joined the PWA and capabilities team like a month ago. Before that, I was a software engineer at Google for 6 years, and I worked from search, Google News, shopping, the whole shebang.
Wow, very cool. Thank you so much. And Henrik, I'm saying that right, yes?
Yeah, Henrik. I think my credentials are far less interesting, but I've just been building a lot of PWAs for basically trying to do this even before we called them PWAs. Somewhat recently, I worked, kind of helped convince Starbucks that they needed a PWA and helped them build that. So that was pretty fun. Written a couple JavaScript books. Also I'm doing some consulting work right now for Walmart, and I'm building a business at anesthesiacharting.com. That's also a PWA, but it's it's medical software. So it's actually for charting vitals, patient vitals and stuff during anesthesia. So
that's very cool.
Yeah,
that's very amazing. I like that. So in today's discussion, we're talking about PWAs. PWAs have been this seemingly just trendy word people are throwing around now, and I kind of want to start off by painting a picture of what a PWA is. So, Kenneth, can you explain what exactly is a PWA?
Yeah, I can try. So it's actually like more than one thing, because first of all, it's like a brand for like the modern web. That's kind of like how I see like a movement of making like native like app experiences that are installable on your system. Technically, it's a set of standards. So there's the Web App Manifest. It's kind of like metadata for your app, like where should it launch, what are the icons, it's like a theme color and stuff like that. And then there's like something called Service Worker that allows you to handle like intermittent network connections, even make it work like offline. And then a few people also said like, well, it also includes like push notifications. So it depends on the definition. But I really think it's about like creating some experiences. So basically creating app-like experiences where you cannot distinguish them from native apps using these technologies and other upcoming technologies, such as something called Project Fugu. We might talk about later.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for the explanation. I'm like brimming with questions right now, but I'm kind of curious on other opinions of or explanations of what a PWA would be from you, Adriana.
Yeah, I think like from our point of view, or my point of view, it also includes like these capabilities that Kenneth was talking about. And basically there is like no difference for the user. Like the user sees an app, it's a web app, but they trust it and interact with them as much as they do with native apps. And that's when it's not only the instability aspect of it, but you also expect things like you don't have to upload a file to interact with it. I mean, in the background, it's all doing the same thing, but like for the user, it's like file picker, they open the photo and they can draw on top of it, just like they do with native apps.
Cool. And Henrik, anything
Yeah,
you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say it's just, there's lots of technical explanations, but I think we got to kind of keep it simple for people who are kind of trying to just grok what it is. And I think it's just like apps for the web, without being stuck in the browser. So you're using the browser to deliver an application, but to the end user, it's just an app like any other. So, and that just eliminates like so many headaches from a developer perspective. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan, obviously.
Yeah, maybe we should point out like the name progressive comes from the idea was that like you visit a website using your browser and you get engaged with this experience. And after that, like initially on Chrome, there will be like an engagement criteria, and it would ask you, hey, this can be installed, or like it used to say like added to your home screen. I think it's just saying install now. And like if you do that, you're like even more engaged. So it's like progressively getting more and more engaging with the user. And when you do that, it could pop out on a desktop as a separate window, or like on a mobile phone, you get its own icon. You can launch it from there, and it just looks like an installable app. You don't get like the Chrome parts of it. What I think is very important about the name, though, is like a lot of people say like, well, this is just like the modern, it's just like web apps. But what I have seen, and I remember back to the ages of HTML5, is a lot of people used to say the same, like, wow, HTML5, that's just the HTML spec. But like for regular user, it was like CSS3, it was like geolocation, it was all kinds of, it was like even workers, all kinds of things around the web. It was like the modern web. But it really worked well with the name, like the brand, like HTML5, because it got like companies and PMs, program managers, like re-engaged in understanding and learning about the web. But if I went out like even to my company, like at Intel, where I work today, and say like, oh, we're gonna like bet on HTML5, like people say like, no, that thing that's long ago, and that kind of failed, didn't it? So you sometimes you just like need this like new name and brand to get people like to look at the web again. It's like, and now that brand is like PWA, and be like, they see these new experiences. They hear they're called progressive web apps like Starbucks, and they're like, whoa, this is great. Like we should do this. So I think like the brand, the value in the brand is pretty big as well. But the P comes from it being progressively more engaging with the user.
So then how can we begin to start to, I guess, spread the gospel, so to speak, of PWAs to get more traction and get more people using it?
Well, just to continue, like I like show good experiences to people and talk about it at conferences and a show like this. Like you've seen, like Henrik has been showing the Starbucks PWA around, and even at Chrome Dev Summit, he was showing his anesthesia PWA, and that gets people like super excited about these things. But like it's also about the possibilities, because I think a lot of companies, when they think of the web, they look like, oh wow, you can do this installable apps today. It's cool, but does the web have all the features that I need to build my business? So people don't look at like what you need today, but they also look a bit ahead, like, yeah, it's fine. Maybe I can do what I need today, but will I be able to do what I need in 5 years? Or maybe my competitors that will be betting on something else like Flutter, maybe they can just go ahead and do that, and I'll lose my business. So that's also why there's been like a lot of focus on getting some kind of like roadmap. So this is the product Fuga again, from the Chromium product, where we're like trying to create like a roadmap of what is coming to the web, like other features, like I think Adriana mentioned like contact picker, and then like other features coming to the web. So people need to be aware of those, so they can go and like give feedback. I need this to build my business, and okay, this is coming. So they regain the trust in the web, because I think like some of the trust has been a bit lost in the web, because you don't know if it will keep up.
That's a very good point.
It feels like kind of an early renaissance of like, I know it sounds silly to say that about the web at this point, but like we are just now starting to get the capabilities that we need to be able to build like real apps using web tech. And I mean, that's the thing that people, that's like half of what I do when I'm talking to companies. Like I get all these product managers coming and asking me, so what can we do? We can't do this, right? Well, actually, yeah, we can. We can't do, X, Y, Z, right? Well, actually, yeah, you can. Not on iOS right now, but maybe later. A lot of those conversations, and people just don't even realize it's out there. So I think, a lot of it is just building cool stuff using this technology and just showing what's possible. I mean, the economics of it make perfect sense. I mean, everybody's got like, every big company has at least 3 dev teams, and that's just absurd. If you don't talk about it from a cost perspective, they're all trying to build the same experience with 3 different technologies. And it's like, I mean, I'm talking Android, web, and iOS. And like you look at most apps out there today, they don't need all that. Like it's just a waste of effort, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's also like from the user's perspective, like sometimes they have like really, really good web experiences, and they do this all set of different work for Android or iOS, but they are mostly focused on the web, and then the user doesn't get the great experience on their devices because the apps are not as good. Like the other day, I was using one of these exercise apps, and like the mobile app was just not working. I was like, I don't know what's happening. And I was, okay, let me check the web. And the website was working just fine. So you can focus on giving the users great experiences, and the user can choose, like, do I do it on my mobile? Do I do it on my laptop? And it's independent of the operating system. And I think that's one of the advantages that more and more people are realizing now, that they can get with one single code base and one single app.
Those are all really great and fair points. And a lot of those focus, I think, on the wins and the benefits and the positive parts of PWAs. But what about any hangups or gotchas or even stock gaps in trying to implement a PWA? What are possibly just some like initial things that we need to be aware of when trying to implement? Henrik.
Safari. Just beware of Safari. I mean, it's one of these things where like people don't realize just how badly Apple is crippling the web by not implementing some of these features in Safari. And not just that, like it's fine if they don't do it, but they don't let anyone else do it either. So a lot of people don't realize that if you download Chrome on iOS, you're not downloading Chrome, you're downloading a wrapper around WebKit. And the same for any other browser on iOS. They're not actually different browser engines, so they don't have different capabilities. So it's completely hamstrung by that. All that said, though, like that doesn't mean that we can't still build a great experience for iOS users and progressively enhance when we have more capabilities. And that's what most of us are trying to do. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest gotcha at the moment. And the nice thing is they're kind of getting sued over their like monopoly situation with the App Store in several different countries at the moment, which I'm personally super excited about. And I've offered to be an expert witness for anybody who wants to like pull me into a court case. I'm happy to explain how their defense is just ridiculous. So anyone's listening, if you know anybody, I'm here. Just hit me up. All right.
It's kind of funny for like streaming games on iOS. I know there was like some problem with their like app store as well. And a lot of these companies, like Apple, actually work with them to enable like, without calling it PWA, but PWA experiences for like streaming games. And they recently, like some at least of the lawyers mentioned the name PWA as.
Yes. That was awesome.
One of their filings.
Bad defense.
But yeah, I totally agree with Henrik. Like Safari WebKit is holding the web back. They say that they have a different view of the web, what it should be. For me, it's also an application developer platform, and and if we don't like keep up, the web will just become irrelevant, and people will move elsewhere. Like if you need to meet developers where they are, so we can meet users where they are. But I'm also like kind of positive because like seeing and having worked in this industry for a long time, both in standards and in Chrome and on WebKit before that, I see like companies say, no, we'll never implement that. We're like, it's not going to happen. Oh, there's service workers in Safari. Oh, now they're working on some limited set of web app manifests. Oh, I just heard that now they're working on the contact picker. So eventually, I'm pretty sure they're going to get like file system access and the like. So it's just going to take a while. Yeah, it all depends on users and developers.
To do WebRTC, but it helps to complain. I mean, I've even heard this from like the mouth of their developer advocates at Apple. You know, like it like raise your hand and say, and you know, the thing they told me is like open tickets on WebKit, and like even if you don't see comments or whatever, like if they see an email of a big company name, so if you work at like, you know, AT&T or whatever, and you open a ticket saying we really want to have feature XYZ, like that will be seen. Like you may not get a response, but that will be noticed, and doing that is well worth your time. So I would urge anyone listening who's like run into any roadblock, like shoot your mouth off in a nice way, of course. But like, you know what I'm saying?
It's about perception, and it's about like meeting users where they are. So like, I think like for a lot of companies, perception matters a lot. So I guess that they're okay if all the iPhone users believe they have the best browsers in the world. If they don't know better, that's fine. But like if you get like big companies and say, well, these are the experience you're using, and they don't work on iPad Pro, so I'm not buying an iPad Pro. Well, that's gonna change their mind. So.
Yeah. That's been fun for the anesthesia stuff because, you know, here we have, we solve a problem for somebody, right? And then they come to us saying, okay, well, what hardware do I need for this? Well, you need this patient vitals monitor, and then you need something like a computer. And we used to tell people to get iPads. We don't tell anybody to get iPads at this point. We specifically tell them not to buy iPads. So here we are telling doctors that their fancy iPads won't do what they need to do. So that happens.
So then how do you combat that? Because you know you have such a large user base of people that want to use iOS devices, right?
Yeah.
And so
I mean, so in this particular case, people are buying like a purpose specific thing. So, you know, we can tell them go buy a $500 Chromebook with a touchscreen, and you'll have everything you need. You know, you can digitally sign it. You can run, you know, whatever features are available via Chrome are available through Chromebooks, and you know you're good to go. And so they save money. They're buying, like I said, in this particular case, a lot of times it's like very purpose specific stuff anyway. But you know, once you kind of show people what's possible, I think the tide will turn.
Yeah, and like something like your Starbucks PWA, like that doesn't require like all these like hardware APIs.
Right.
So you're good on iOS.
Yeah, for sure. We even encrypt, and this was a while ago, but we were encrypting using like the web crypto stuff to encrypt stuff we were storing locally on the device to meet some security compliance ridiculousness that they had. But yeah, there's cool stuff you can do, and like you scan your barcode and pay at the counter. You know, pull it up on a web app and scan it. Where that part works offline too. So because we're actually encrypting it, storing it locally. So yeah, I mean, there's things in there, and basically what we did is we just used whatever was available, and then for everything else, we had to come up with some sort of fallback or other mechanisms. But for most things, like for most normal applications, you already have everything you need. There's so many companies that make apps like that don't need apps.
True.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like a pleasant waste of resources.
Yeah, that's what it actually is. And once you actually show that to people and show that you legitimately can create really great experiences that don't involve that huge investment, it's a different conversation. You know?
So then what is the I guess the initial costs if hypothetically if there was a company that wanted to adopt PWAs today, right? Startup, well-defined company, it doesn't matter. They already have a product. What is the I guess the cost to get into using PWAs or make the switch to start implementing it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of like product you have. If you have like a web experience, like you could probably like make a few changes like quite easily and get that get started. So like what is required is that you have to serve your website over HTTPS, like which basically is a requirement for everything today, all new APIs. You will have some trouble if the site is split across like different URLs, like different domains. So it is better if it works in one domain because that's considered an origin, and that's like the security model of the web. So if you like click on one link and it goes to another like domain, that might like get out of your progressive web app. So you should, in theory, only have like one origin. Then you need to have a service worker. The requirements change. It used to be that you just need to have a service worker and then like it was good to go. Now you need to have some kind of offline experience. So if it can't, like if it's not online, like at least it should serve a page, maybe say, oh, sorry, you're offline. And I guess like with time, browsers is going to like maybe up the requirements. So it would be nice if you had like some kind of like fallback offline experience.
Yeah, we're moving towards having the offline experience, but it's not being checked yet. Just asterisk there.
And then like the last thing is basically like you have this like web app manifest is a JSON format where you go and describe your app and like should it start in standalone mode without like the Chrome or the browser mode or other upcoming modes, theme color, icons, and the like. And there's a few requirements about like the sizes and stuff like that. And like even with that, you can make something that is installable and works as a progressive web app. But of course, like it's about the experience. So you need to build upon that and make it like more like native like. And so if you wanted like to launch without the Chrome and stuff, like you should have a way to like a back button or something. Otherwise, like users might get lost in the experience and not know what's going on. But there are a lot of small ways you can like make this like more like app-like. We support now like shortcuts. So, you know, like on Android, if you long press on an icon, on Windows, you right click on an icon in like the taskbar. Like you can get like menus, like in Outlook, like new message, new calendar invite. You can do things like that today. You can even receive shares. So if people want to share like an image to your app, it's installed, or you can share to other apps. So lots of ways to like progressively enhance and turn your app more progressive, more into a progressive web app.
So then I'm curious about the versioning and keeping things up to date, because you say that there's this this method of where we can either view something in the web or you can download it locally to a device, right? What does that look like? How do we keep the application up to date if somebody was to install it locally?
So there's a few things there. Like, so one is that, if you make an actual offline experience that is cache first, meaning it's going to load your offline experience as a first option, which you can decide. Like, there's all kinds of strategies you can take here. But if we're talking about building like a true, analogous experience to an application, then yeah, what you're going to do is the first time somebody opens it, you're going to immediately show them stuff, and in the background, you're going to start kind of preparing to have this offline support. And part of that is then caching assets locally. And then so next time when it boots up, if it already has a service worker installed, and just serving from the cache immediately. So the way the model is built and the way it's designed is that you can, and again, all this is optional, which in some ways just makes it more confusing. But what you can do is you immediately show them the old experience on launch, and then you update in the background that you prepare for the next time. And then the next time, they get the updated experience. And there's all manner of in between that you can do there as well. I mean, you can kind of have a system to send messages to the existing app that shows a little bar or something that says, tap here to reload. Some people do it on navigation. So anytime they change URL, they seamlessly switch to the next experience, once it's available. So you have all kinds of options there. I've even built crazy stuff where, it downloads the app. The currently running app gets to decide what version it shows, because so in the case of the anesthesia thing, right, we don't want it updating ever in the middle of an anesthesia case. So we had to pass that control to the app itself, right? So the way that it works is if you're in the middle of an application, it'll download and update versions in the background and have them ready to go. But it's not until the currently running app says to update that it actually switches over to the new experience. So we do that, at the completion of a case. When you're done, then you're kind of getting ready for the next one. But there's pitfalls there too. I mean, you could shoot yourself in the foot trying to do this kind of stuff because you can get somebody locked into a bad experience. So you got to be careful. But you have so many options. You can really do whatever strategy makes the most sense for your business.
Yeah, and my team in the community are trying to build tools and create patterns so that developers do not fall so easily into these pitfalls. Like in my team, we have this thing that is called Workbooks, that it's a tool that encapsulates some of these cases from the service worker API, and you can do things like pre-cache your assets so that they are properly updated when you launch a new version. And these kind of things that are done over and over depending on the application.
I think I want to take a step back because I'm not sure that everyone actually knows what a service worker is. And also like you said, like install. When you install a progressive web app, you're not actually installing anything. It's basically just like adding the icon to the system. It is still like just going to the web browser and typing the URL. It works exactly the same way. There is like, I know on Chrome, there's like in the background, if you go and modify the web app manifest and change the icons, it will even like periodically check that and update it. But like what Henrik and Adriana are talking about is like service workers, because if service worker is this like JavaScript worker, so that sits in between your browser and the network. It's like a proxy. So whenever like you're going through network traffic, you could like stop and do something else. Like you could go and fetch it from the network, put it in the cache, and serve it back to the user. You could generate something and serve the user. You could do any kind of mixture, like try to erase to see if you have it in the cache and how fast you can get it from the network and return the fastest one back. So it's very, very flexible, which is why it's great. We have tools like what Adriana is working on, like Toolbox, that helps the user decide what is best for different cases. Service worker is extended to do other things as well. It's a process that is not running all the time. So if you're not using your tab, it's not like every web page gets a service worker. It's going to be shut down after a few seconds of inactivity, but it can launch really fast. So for instance, if I'm not even running my website and I get a notification, that will like trigger the service worker, wake it up quickly, check whatever to do, which could be like show a notification that will bring the user back into the app or do something else. So there are other extensions about like downloading files in the background with background fetch. I just wanted to make sure that it's not just for handling offline, but offline is definitely one of the big use cases. So I don't know if maybe Adriana could like explain better than me that what a service worker is.
No, I think, yeah, it's a layer between your app and the network. And so your app sends a request to the service worker. It checks what to do, like reply from the cache or go to the network. And it also does these other capabilities like background sync, background fetch, or do push notifications. But like, yeah, traditionally, since they're so powerful, maybe they can also like generate pitfalls if you are not very sure what they're doing. But like, as I said, like the community and my team are trying to create group patterns so that people know how powerful they are and the pitfalls around it so they can take advantage of them.
Yeah, huge +1 to the Workbox plug there. I mean, I've used Workbox, even though I like worked with raw service workers a bunch. Like, it's still a really nice toolkit, and it's a great place to start. And you can start with that, and then kind of add other stuff as you need to. But it really gets you in the door, way more easily than trying to build it all from scratch.
I just want to like, before we got service worker, we had something called like app cache, and I'm pretty sure that some people have played around with that. And the problem is that you could, like, if you use it wrong, you end up with this like version of your app that is never updating, which is something that you can avoid with service worker. You can update the service worker. Like you said, you can like always serve from cache and like you never get the new version. But there are ways that I believe there seemed like a header you could send today that will like purge all the service workers if you do something like extremely bad. So there are definitely ways around that. Because one of the things with service workers is that if you have the same app open in like 5 different tabs, and some people like me, because I have a lot of different tabs open, so I don't know, I have it open multiple times, well, then it's going to stay using the same service worker until like all of them are closed or like restarted. So there are a few pitfalls there.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense, because the way that I was thinking about PWAs was that you had to like almost operate in the same way that you would distribute a normal application in an app store. Go to the app store, download the thing. But it seems like maybe the distribution channel and the whole operation of PWAs in and of itself is just completely different from a standard app.
I mean, that's where the money is. It's like, that's the ticket, right? Like, software distribution is hard. Like, just fundamentally, it's one of the more difficult problems as a developer in general. And so the web's model for just like publishing a new version stays intact. So that's all you got to do. All you got to do is push your new code to the server, and you're there. Like, maybe as part of that, you're going to generate a service worker that has like information about your latest build, what files exist, and some kind of manifest that describes that. But like the process, that's like the entire beauty of it. It's so easy to throw a web page on the internet, and you get to keep doing that. But instead, you can have all these additional amazing capabilities. You don't have to worry about, all this code signing stuff, buying, extended validation certificates for Windows, and, getting your CPA to sign off on your existence as a company so that you can buy an extended validation certificate for $400. Like you skip all that. Like you just publish a web page, and that's glorious. I mean, that is literally the reason that this is so important and so huge and so valuable.
And you can even like update it at any time. Like I've heard about
Anytime.
like cases where people like, oh, it's like almost like Black Friday, and my app is stuck in like a review queue and it's not getting out there, and I'm losing business. And like you don't have those problems with the web.
Yep. There's no one else between you and your users that you need to appease or pay money to, which is another really big aspect of this.
So if there was a normal user operating a PWA, would they be able to tell the difference between like using a PWA versus a standard app? Or
it depends on the app. Once they've added it, no. I mean, and it honestly depends on the platform too. Like on iOS, yes, they probably could. On Android, no. Like I've been using the Twitter PWA exclusively as my main Twitter client for like however long it's been in existence, and it just keeps getting more useful. Like, now I can share links from other apps to that. It just shows up in my native share menu like everything else. And like you can't tell. Like there's no real reason. Like so maybe some features are available in like some other version of the app that's not quite, that they haven't yet done on the web, but it's not because they couldn't, it's because they just haven't. They're on different release cadences or something. So
I see.
Yeah, it really, if the platform allows it, then you can't tell the difference.
So how do we, because I know that there is a difference between like, say, developing an app in like Ionic. How do you, what are first of all, what are the difference between, the Ionic experience of development or similar Cordova experience and PWAs?
Well, I think like Ionic itself can be like multiple things. They have like a framework for like creating like the icons and the scrolling list and the things like that can be used for progressive web apps. And they even announce it on the website, like say like use Ionic for progressive web apps. What they also have is a tool called Capacitor, which is like a phone gap. It's a way that you can like package up your web app and into like a native package and get it in the App Store. So it's definitely true that in many markets, like the App Store is the place people have like been taught to find apps. So a lot of people that are doing progressive web app, they also want to get them in the App Store. And there's like good development going on that front as well. So like one of the things is that Google, for instance, they worked on something called trusted web activities. So it's basically, I don't know, there's some technicalities here. On Chrome, you have this thing called Chrome custom tabs. So this is basically if you go into another app that doesn't embed a web view, but you click on a link, it will like show the sheet will come in as like a mini browser, but it's actually running in Chrome. So it's sharing cookies and the like. It's just a different kind of Chrome view. They made a way that you could do this in like full screen Chrome custom apps. So you could use it for progressive web apps. So basically you can write an Android app, launch a custom Chrome tab with the progressive web app, and like people cannot tell. And it becomes like a very, very small Android app that you can get through the App Store. So that's like the Google solution. So you do your progressive web app, you have it on the website, but you can also package it up and have it in the Play Store. And as the website is updated, it will also be updated. It's not like it's actually packaging down to like the CSS files and JavaScript files. It's just like a wrapper. But when you put it in the store, you need to adhere to the store rules. So they might have different rules, like what you can do. For instance, on Play Store, if you want to do billing, you got to use like Play Billing. So there's also a new API for Chrome that allows you to better integrate with that, like with micropayments, which you can use on the web. So it's also like progressive enhancement. If that feature is available, you can use it. The interesting part is that on Chrome OS, you can run like Android apps. So I heard this announcement, well, now we're going to like allow like trusted web activities on Android. I was like, oh my God. So I'm going to get like this window running the Android version of Chrome on Chrome OS. We have like an optimized browser, but luckily that was not the case. It's actually like launching actual Chrome windows running in Chrome. So if you go and install something like Twitter, you find that on your Chromebook today in the Play Store. I click install. It's just like installing the progressive web app. So it's basically like a wrapper to the progressive web app. And I see like Microsoft is doing something similar. They have this tool called PWAbuilder.com. So it's a website where you build this. You can build the PWAs on that side, but you can also build a version for Windows. But they're even working on better ways to integrate this even better in Windows, so that I say like my wet dream would be that you just give them the URL and they'll add it to the Play Store. They'll like authenticate and make sure that you're following the policies, and they'll just like add it. And I guess that will eventually get there. There's some technicalities to overcome with the infrastructure, but yeah.
Yeah, I think like to go back to your question, it's like all platforms have this different packaging that they do. Like you need an Android app or iOS app or the Windows Store package, whatever they do, because I don't know. And there are these platforms like Flutter or Cordova that you mentioned that they basically have like a standard way that you create a button in your app, and then it will eventually like compile and spit out different packages based on the platform. But like the output is different apps for each platform, but the PWA, it's like one code base, like it's the same button that is gonna be installed in your Linux machine, in your Mac, in your Android. So that's the difference there of building apps using Flutter or Cordova or PWAs.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
those tools are all trying to generate like native equivalents, right?
Yeah.
So it's like an abstraction layer. You go up one layer and then it kicks out these 3 different native things or whatever layer of compilation they're doing to do that, right? But
well, actually,
we just skip all that.
Well, actually, with Ionic, it's actually 100% web based, so they don't generate like a native app. They have like web components. You build a web app. They just wrap it into this capacitor where you get a few extra like JavaScript APIs. I think it's based on some plugins where you can access the camera in a more native way. But that's like the closest to web of these solutions. It's not like Flutter.
I was thinking like Flutter and React Native.
React Native, yeah.
But yeah.
okay, fair points. I'm curious about backing up a little bit to Henrik. You mentioned how Twitter has a PWA, or Twitter, the website is a PWA, and then you also mentioned this idea of being able to copy a link from one website or a PWA into Twitter.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? I guess that integration or the communication between two PWAs like that. Like,
I haven't actually built something. It's called the Shared Target API. Kenneth, have you built something with that? I haven't actually used that.
I've also I've worked a bit on the API and reviewed it.
Okay.
It was mostly done by the people, the Google team in Australia. But basically the way it works is you have web share, which is like a very simple API, navigator.share, and you give it some data like title, and you can even get an array of files that can be like transferred to another app. So that will work with any native app on systems supporting it, including progressive web apps supporting Shared Target. So Shared Target is an extension to the web app manifest. You give it a bit of information as well that needs to represent it in the UI. And then it basically is based on the form support that you already have in browsers, like how you submit a form. So handling a submission of a form is basically how you handle getting the shared data. So you give it the URL to where you're handling that, and where there's a get or post form and a bit of extra information. Of course, it only works when users actually go and install it as a progressive web app. Just going to a website that is a progressive web app, it's not gonna mean that people can share to it until they actually see that icon in their like app launcher or whatever. But it's quite simple to do. And it even works with like, I just tried it with files a little while ago, playing around with generating JPEG XL files and actually sharing them.
That's cool. That's very cool. And I'm kind of curious about like, never mind. I lost my train of thought on that question. I'm sure they'll cut that part out.
No worries.
Oh, yes. Now I remember it. About the manifest. I was digging into some of the documentation on PWAs and trying to understand this whole idea of the manifest. Um, where does that live, and what is that basically like the scaffolding or the instructions for PWA? What is
It
it?
is application metadata. So even like on Android, I believe like I'm not an Android engineer, but I believe you do like XML file with metadata as well. So it's kind of common for platforms. It's something that looks very simple. It's based on JSON because that's what we use on the web. Another option would be like add 100 different like meta tags to web pages we decided not to do. So basically what it is, it's a list of icons. Like what are the different icons that this app can use in different sizes. Sometimes like we're adding ways that you can have like a dark mode icon as well. Something is like the purpose, where should this icon be used? Is it like in the quick launch, like the shortcuts, or is it maybe a notification tray and stuff like that? So there's a bit of extra metadata there. Then there's like the title, the URL where you start the app. You can even like add some info to the URL so you can detect that the people launching as a personal web app. And then we're like extending it, like what is the scope of the app, like what kind of URLs are part of this app as well.
Related applications, screenshots now.
Yeah,
right?
and like those are the new things. Like there's actually a new spec. It's called the manifest application information, I believe. So like we pull, because we're trying to get that through the standardization track, and actually the web app manifest becoming a standard. It needs to like agree, like it needs to represent what users are implementing. Safari is not implementing any of like description or screenshots, so that is a different spec now.
Okay.
So there's like metadata for like store like experiences. So we have like description, screenshots. There's even like categories, and there's IANA things for like if you get a approval of the rate of games and stuff like that. And like even that was meant for like stores. A lot of that was contributed by Microsoft. But now you even have like Chrome on Android, where if a website actually adds these things, you get this nicer install screen where you can actually check through the screenshots and you can read what this app is. So like all kinds of metadata. But some of it is also like declarative instructions, like this is the URL where you launched the app, or like this is the URL and the data you need for like being a share target, or like these are the menu items I have for like the launching, like the shortcuts, like long press, right click menu. For something like that, we could have done that also with an imperative API where you did it from JavaScript. And actually, when I worked on that, that was like one of the ideas that we would have both. So there's like a declarative way, use web app manifest. If there's people want a more like imperative way, need to change it at runtime, we'll make a JavaScript API. We just never get around to that, and maybe there's not enough use cases for it. So something similar, Microsoft is working on protocol handlers. So you could register, like like mail2 :
This is
so
awesome.
you could register your own thing and have it like launch a progressive web app. You can already do that to some extent on the web. It's part of HTML5 or HTML spec. So it's called register protocol handler. But they're actually improving upon that and adding it to the web app manifest, because that's where it makes the most sense, like at least to define it declaratively. But you still have the other option as well. So it's kind of like declarative instruction that is really related to the launching of the app and like interacting with it UI wise, the shell, and then like the installability things, like how to install it, what are the icons, what is the title, and stuff like that. So it's like really application metadata. So that's I guess that's my
maybe analogous to like a package JSON file on a node module.
Yeah.
It's like all the related stuff. Like here's all the capabilities. Here's how you run the thing. Here's what you start with. It's kind of, here's my app, and you just serve it as a JSON file, like it's from a web server. So it's not hard to add it. You create the file, and then you just add a meta tag that says, here's my manifest, and that's it. So
it's also something that is like works for the whole app. So you might have an app that is not a single page application, but you have like multiple URLs and the like. So instead of having to replicate as meta tags in every website, like this is served once and updated once. Like it's like one URL. So there's some work discussion going around app identity now with the web app manifest. So like what is the one thing that identifies this as one progressive web app and not another progressive web app? So that is also being defined and discussed at this moment.
Okay, that's cool. I'm curious too about applications that we talked about the inability to really distinguish between the PWA locally installed versus the native application. What are some applications today that we could kind of study as developers to kind of I don't know, dig into some best practices about implementing PWAs, maybe in like, today's whatever projects we decide to build. So you mentioned there's Starbucks and Twitter. Are there any other applications that maybe we can study to kind of like?
I also use Pinterest.
Pinterest as well? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I've also used Telegram, the messaging app. That one it's pretty good. And I also use Todoist. So basically, as we have been describing, my bar is like they look and act like the native app. So I literally don't know which one I'm using, and that's what I'm qualifying as a good PWA. So that's my bar, and those are the ones that I personally use.
Yeah,
But
I think there's another
bunch of them out there.
I think there's another way to scope this question is like what actually defines that something is a native app. Like at the end of the day, it's a screen that you're painting to, and like Google could decide tomorrow that native Android apps are written with Flutter, and those would be native apps. So I guess like the way that I see it's about the integration with the host OS. So you have a host OS, and you want it to be integrated so it looks like the like default apps that you have on that system. So it is about like performance and like nice smooth animations. Of course, as we're talking about apps, it's mostly like single app application, like app-like experiences. These are like one page, another page. And then it's about the capabilities, because if you can't do the things that native apps do, like changing the color, like go to dark mode, or changing maybe something like I think Microsoft is working on the title bar, that you can even like add a search bar inside the title bar, because Spotify is doing that, Outlook is doing that, Microsoft Teams is doing that. So if you can't do that, like those becomes one of the things that I say, oh, it has a search bar, so it's not a progressive web app. So when I cannot find those differences any longer, well, then they're indistinguishable, and that's the goal. That's at least like my goal for working on progressive web apps. Do this like really good native integration, OS integration, like share target, push notifications, the title bar, not showing the Chrome. Then like the whole other side is like, is the web itself with the performance. Can you write like application where bottom looks like native on Android and on iOS, and is it still as performant? So that's another part of it, which I kind of think is related, but it's not really progressive web app. Depends on your definitions.
So the standard of when it comes to developing this the progressive web app, how do we define what the standard is? I guess is a better way to ask that question.
I guess like the web, there is no standard. This is one of the big advantages and disadvantages of the web. I think like native development in some sense is easy to get started with because you follow the tutorial, and normally it will be like Android today. We're probably gonna say like Kotlin, and these are the APIs. Then there might be other ways you can like use web tech to write an Android app. You use Flutter, but it's kind of like a standard way. On iOS, that would probably be like Swift and Swift UI today, I guess. But like there's kind of like a way that you get into it, and you just use those components. Use a bottom. You like this is default bottom. On the web, it's different because web is cross-platform. So there's a lot of innovation going on. Like this is also like the challenge. So if I write a progressive web app on Android, should I use like Android bottoms? And should those change to iOS bottoms on iOS to get this integration? Or should I opt for my own design that looks like kind of integrated everywhere, even just in the web browser? And I think like those are maybe some of the challenges we have. And then like getting the same performance for that. So people can build on like frameworks. You could use no framework like me. I love using like just web components, and I'm doing fine with that. But people will be like having existing experience written in Angular, and yeah, you can also turn that into a progressive web app. Or if it's in React or Vue or whatever is on the web, any website can become a progressive web app.
Okay, that makes sense.
There's an interesting thing I would like to add just to that conversation about. So one thing, it used to be like when people first started doing this, first it was like, oh, we can build iOS apps. That was the mobile app. Now everyone's building for multiple platforms already. So I've seen this interesting trend where it used to be, oh, well, let's try to match the host platform. That's going away. Like I see more and more companies, and Starbucks did this. Other companies that I maybe shouldn't name are doing the same thing. I don't know if I'm supposed to say certain things, but anyway, the point is there is a trend, in my opinion, from the design side inside companies to just define what is the company's look and feel for an app experience, and then implementing that across the board anyway. So that's happening currently, between iOS and Android. They're not trying to make it look like an iOS app. They're trying to make it look like, a Starbucks app, whatever that means. And I mean, it's not like this stuff isn't rocket science. Like a button is like a rectangle you can click. Like you can make it whatever color you want, and you can choose to have it respond to user interaction whatever way you want. And if it's a great mobile experience, you could probably use that across web, iOS, and Android. And that's how a lot of companies are doing this right now. I think ultimately this is all going to shift towards, well, if we can do it all the same way, let's just do it on the web. Once the capabilities are there, and once the distribution and the acknowledgement from the platforms that that this is the way to go, once that's there.
I think you're totally correct there. Like just like reading Twitter, I see like so many posts about design system. Right. Every company have their design system, but I think that there's a change because like when I worked at Nokia, like at that time, like icons across like different systems look really different. So when you had this app at that point that were doing their own design system, they kind of looked like alien or like webby. But I think there's been like even like iOS and Android design is much more similar today than they used to be. So I think it's becoming like less and less of a problem. And like, yes, as you said, like every company want their own design system.
Yep.
I think you're muted.
Uh-oh. There he is. He's back. All right.
So to ask a more broader general question then about, I guess, how we can succeed with PWAs, like how would you define that success? Like how would you define that we're actually like implementing it well or following best practices? Like how do we succeed in our development?
I think for service workers, maybe Adriana want to say something?
I think I would define a successful PWA one that users want to use and one that users ask more of. Like they just want to use your app and you take into account the user journeys. Like with the pandemic and everything, we've been using more and more, like we switch for our phone when we go to the backyard or whatever, or we're walking, but we are like a lot of the time on our computer, and like we start reading an article and we want to continue on our phone, or we look for a business and we want to take it in our map. And like if those are the journeys that your users are doing, like doing multi-platform, multi-device, I think the web, it's a great tool. And the fact that you think about like, what are my users doing? Like when people think like, oh, my users don't use offline experience, but like maybe they do. Maybe you want to cache the latest 10 articles that they have. Like you don't have to use all the APIs if they don't make sense, but if your users are sharing things among them, then implement the web target API and those kind of things. So I think for making a really shiny PWA means like you sitting down and thinking, how do my users use my app? And how can I give them those experiences using web capabilities? And if web capabilities don't exist yet, go and complain with the people that build them so that we get them done.
Yes, please. I mean, so from my perspective, the successful part, like the companies that I consult with on this stuff, like for them, it's all about conversions, right? So, the statistics seem to support the fact that if you get the user into that optimized mobile experience, like let's forget about all the platforms and all the apps for a second, and just think about the goal of the company is how quickly can I get the user and how seamlessly can I get the user into my optimized mobile experience that I'm wanting to show them, because then I can convert that customer, right? So take the example of Starbucks, right? So the thing I kept nagging them on, here they're trying to get people to sign up for their rewards program, right? So you're standing at the back of the line at Starbucks. You don't go to Starbucks very often, but and you see this little sign that says, "Hey, go sign up for our rewards program." If you ask them to, as their phone is switching onto the Starbucks Wi-Fi and it's confused about where to get data from, if you're asking them to go to an app store, wait, however long to download 100 megabytes of an app, and then install it, and then they were already signed in before on the web, and now they got to go sign in again. Oh, what's my password? Like before you know it, like they're just going to be like, I'll do it next time. And so if you can give them a URL and drop them into that experience that you're trying to get them to, and then let them keep that experience around, I mean, that's where the money is. Like if you can get that's what's going to lead to conversions. Like lower the bar to entry. Like people spend so much money trying to get them to download their apps to never be used again. Like in the context, in the time when they're there, they're ready to make a transaction. Give them the absolute easiest way to drop that experience into their phone without committing to it, right? They don't have to download and install this thing that's going to clutter up their home screen. A lot of people don't want to add another app at this point, which is a new thing. It used to be like, oh, they have an app, I'm going to go get it. Like no one's doing that anymore. It's like, I don't want more apps, But if you earn that level of trust with the customer and then they can choose, I want to keep this around by adding it to their home screen. To me, like this is why it's inevitable that this is going to be the way this is done, because the economics support it. The user experience that we're trying to create supports it. Yes, there are challenges to getting there, but the success is how quickly can you get your user into your optimized mobile experience? And that's a lot of times these days, the answer is web.
Yeah, so I guess like simple to type in URL, also something you remember and can share with people. Sometimes I've seen progressive web apps where I need to search for it to find URL, not a good, nice experience. Mm-hmm. Like load fast, like the initial experience should load as fast as possible, even on slow networks. And then like don't show people like what's called like door slammers, like take this survey as the first time you go to this web page. So like, please create an account. So like make it work without having an account. And first at the point when you want one, like make it like easy to sign up. And of course, like if you have an account, make it really easy to log in, which is also something that people can get wrong.
So can you maintain the same login experience between? It sounds like you can, right? You can keep the same security, the same login experience.
Especially on the web, if you like Henrik said, like if you already have an account, like this is not running in the web view, this is running in the web browser, so Chrome or Safari if it's on Safari. So it's like sharing the cookies and the login credentials and the like. So
right.
Yes. And I believe like on Android, some of that is all even shared between native app and web apps. Because I remember like when logging into like Netflix, the native app, it already knew who I was. So I think there's some way they can even share that.
Yeah.
But there is something called Credential Management Api as well. That's a new API that I haven't used. That should make it more easy to like re-log in and stuff like that.
We did that on Starbucks. So for the sign-in page, basically, you can think of it as a way to automatically request the password from the browser's password manager. So like and you get some native browser UI that pops down. If you have more than one, it'll say which account do you want to log in with, but otherwise it'll just do it automatically if you want. So you hit the login screen and then it relies on asking the browser for credentials, and then just you can submit the form with those credentials if you want. So it's pretty slick. I mean, you can eliminate. That's like relying on the browser. You have to use the browser's password manager, and you have to have the browser, have that in there. But it's a quick, easy way to get people in without having to retype it every time. So,
yeah, I think one of the things I always like said that I liked about the web, like the so-called like, is like this what reach of like everyone like web works across like any kind of OS and devices, but the other one is like this like almost no friction. It's just like typing in a URL. So like something like this is like removing friction. So I guess like a successful progressive web app for me is like removing friction, like as little friction
Absolutely.
as possible to get to the core experience.
And like everybody knows this, like native, like the Android, what was it called? Instant apps. It was an attempt to go the other direction, right? Like it's like, oh, well, we know we want to give that sort of web-like experience, but we're going to let you like develop these slivers of apps and like instantly drop someone into that experience. It kind of works, but it like the mindset isn't there. Like the native developers are not used to thinking about, minimizing code and doing code splitting and all this kind of stuff that we've been like learning how to do on the web for the last 5 years or what more, So it's like we're set up for fast loading. The web knows how to drop somebody into an experience. It's really easy to screw that up, but that's kind of our default. The fact that we're able to take somebody who has no previous experience with our application and in a matter of seconds dropping him into that optimized mobile experience, that's gold.
Yeah, I had a lot of talk with some of my Android friends on instant Android apps, and like first of all, I think it's 4 megabytes is like the average size, or something that's like, oh, that's big. But then like you mentioned like code splitting, and I believe like I haven't done any, so maybe I'm wrong. But it was something like you can have like if you have like 4 different views, you could do like 4 different packages. So you would split it yourself. But like, oh, but now I'm duplicating code. Well, then you could have like a base package. But like on the web, you can do that any level you want. Like tools, you can have like 100 packages, or that's maybe too many, or maybe just 15, and you can generate them on the fly. Like this is not built for this, and developers they're not in that mindset. They're pulling in a big library, and if that library doesn't support like code splitting or just like doesn't have modules, well, then you're going to use the whole library. So I felt like the whole ecosystem had to change. So I think it has been very little success. And I haven't seen an instant Android app in ages.
I think the only one I could point to that like where they did this and it kind of made sense was I think Vimeo did this, and it kind of worked. Like so if you click the Vimeo link, they would give you the option of like dropping into the instant app experience, and it was fine, but certainly nothing that they couldn't. I mean, we can show videos on the web. We don't need an app for that, So again, like. Yeah, friction. It's all about just eliminating friction. I think that's a huge, huge thing.
So for developers, I guess in the next year or so, you guys bring up a lot of great points, and I kind of wonder if companies are going to make this switch, or are they starting to make the switch to use PWAs more frequently or convert their current product to PWAs. We would then need to kind of eliminate Android and iOS developers then, and kind of migrate to this new, new wave concept, I guess.
I would hope that we can bring them along, like I don't know if it has to be a cut the organization into thirds and only keep one.
I also wanted to point out this is like progressive web apps work also on desktop, and it's actually a pretty growing market on desktop right now. So like initially it was like all mobile, and that was where the fun was. But like I guess a lot of companies doing desktop apps today, they have the same problem. Like, do I need to write a Mac app, a Windows app, a Chrome app? But I kind of also want to have a cloud solution because like that's what everyone is doing, and like the web is like perfect for this. So why not extend that and just do a progressive web app that works great with your cloud infrastructure and can look native and nicely integrated. So I think a lot of companies are like looking of ways to migrate away from Win32 or UWP and moving to the web. Those apps are going to take a bit longer to launch because they're pretty big apps. But like I am using like Outlook progressive web app right now, and I find it better than the supposedly native app, and it looks really integrated. And like I believe like there's rumors that Teams is becoming a progressive web app as well. And like you're seeing many of these apps, many native apps are actually web apps or based with web technology, such as Spotify and like Slack and even Visual Studio Code. Some of them are using something called Electron, which is like Cordova or PhoneGap that wraps it in a Chrome version, which has some downsides. In that, like maybe you never update that Chrome version, which might have security issues. It's pretty big, cannot share the GPU resources which Chrome can much better. But like and that's just like us missing the web to add those capabilities that they need to build those experiences on the web. And with that, I actually wanted to point out that a couple of years ago, Google started this project called Project Fugu. It's actually called the Capabilities Project, but everyone now calls it Project Fugu. So they had a project called Project Fizz. They had a project called Project Fizz that was like adding like Web Bluetooth, Web USB, like some very specific hardware APIs that some company really needed. They added that to the web. I think it was a pretty good success. I at least like made many talks and many companies were super excited about it. And then like Project Fugu is like the next step. Like instead of just like having one-off APIs and add to the web, they were like looking at how do we regain the trust in the web. As I talked about initially, how do we kind of get like a roadmap that people can know what is coming to the web. So if you look at like the platform, like I think Alex Russell, my friend at Google, he made this like nice graph that was showing like, oh, we have these meta platforms, and yeah, it's great, but like capabilities are like that, like new capabilities coming along. You don't need to support them all on the web initially, but after a while they become commodity. Like every laptop has a USB port today, right? Almost everyone have a camera, so like they just become commodity. And if you kind of use them on the web, well, then your platform, your meta platform, is not that useful, and developers cannot like invest in it, and it becomes like legacy. So in order like, and that was like growing, that gap between commodity support, like hardware support and operating system support, and the web was like widening. So Project Fugu is basically a way to like do the opposite, like close that gap, and then like find a way that we will keep on closing it so it doesn't grow again. And giving like the developers and the program managers the trust in the web that this is a platform they can use to build their business. And like if you look at like what we have managed to ship the first 2 years, like something like Web Share Target, file system access, we can access like files in your file system in a secure way, contact picker, like I don't remember everything off my head, but Web Serial, Web Hit, Web NFC, something else I worked on. Like there's so many things, and like we're like it's on a pretty good cadence now, and it's getting pretty exciting.
Project Fugu.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's easily I've been going on record. It's easily the most exciting thing to have happened on the web for like the last decade. Like it's a big deal. It's all the stuff that I've wanted forever to have available to web applications, to not just make them not be second-class citizens on the operating system, because that's what they are currently, right? Even on Android, that's added all this stuff. It's still just like a notch down, which that notch is disappearing, but Fugu is what's making that disappear. Just from UI stuff, being able to there's all kinds of, if you look at that Project Fugu tracker, they built a little app that shows us stuff. It's so exciting. They've got all kinds of stuff, everything from like being able to do desktop widgets and all kinds of stuff in there. And like it's all the things the web has been needing to do for a long time. So very exciting stuff.
I should also point out that, sorry.
The tracker lives at fugu-tracker.web.app. So developers can participate of these discussions that we're having and like give input on how they want the API to work, and we are listening. So go there, comment on bugs, and start things that you really, really want.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that though this was started by Google, like very quickly after like we at Intel and Microsoft joined, so it is still a Chromium only project, like because we haven't got a lot of support from Mozilla and Apple in this direction for the web. So this is what I believe is the right direction. Like it should be a application development platform as well, not just a document viewer, but like people have different opinions. But like even then we're like seeing people implement like more and more of these APIs, like at least like once, like Web Share and like I said, Contact Picker, and I'm sure we're gonna see more. But it's mostly being led by people investing on the Chromium project. So Microsoft Edge and Chrome. So also like desktop OS. So that's probably also like one of our interests at Intel. Like we really like this is really great for the desktop. This is making the PC relevant, whether it's running like Windows or Chrome OS.
That leads me kind of into my next question about, I guess, the for each one of you, I'm curious about hearing like specifically some of the other features that you would ideally like to see for the web for enhancing PWAs? Like, is it Henrik?
I've got a few. Yeah. So just as an example of how glorious this is when all of a sudden something lands on the web. So I mentioned for this anesthesia thing. So what we do is we connect directly to these anesthesia monitors. And so some of them, a lot of them are still using or serial ports, like old school RFC or RF232, I think it is, or whatever, RC230. I don't know. I forget what the actual name of the serial spec is. But the point is, like, we used to have to do Electron to do any sort of local hardware connection. So that would mean, and we still do. We have an Electron app that we use for talking TCP to certain types of monitors locally on networks. But for serial, if they support web serial, we can just give them a USB cable, plug it into the back of their monitor, and then it's good to go. Like they don't need to download a desktop app anymore. So previously, and the reason this was a problem before is, one, it's a different API. So we had to compile node serial for different platforms, which was kind of more difficult than you expect. Then, we had to come up with some like UI for managing this stuff within the web app. And now, like, we can just tell people to plug it in, and that's it. Like, end of steps. So in terms of like removing barriers, it's wonderful. So like, I can't wait to flush our Electron app forever, because I don't want to keep that thing. Like, it's a pain. The only reason we do it is because you have TCP. And so the one feature that I would absolutely love to see, and I know is being actively worked on currently, is the native sockets API. So you could actually open TCP connections to arbitrary IP addresses on local networks and whatever, and actually talk to devices. Like, that's huge. That's huge in the education space. It's huge in the like hacker space. It's anything that requires some like really interesting hardware stuff like IoT or whatever. Like, that's what we need. So that's a big one for me. I'm super excited that's being worked on. The other one is the ability to generate PDFs. So we ultimately produce these reports. And right now we have to run a server that runs Puppeteer headlessly. So it's just like Chrome, and it loads our HTML that we send it in a browser, takes a screenshot and generates a PDF that we send back. But it'd be super cool to just do all that stuff locally, because you can already do it. Like, Chrome already knows how to do it. Like, you hit print, you go save as PDF, and you're done. Like, that's all I want. I just want an API for that. Again, friction. It's all about friction. I'm telling you, like, remove steps and people will use this stuff. Sorry. End of rant. Go ahead. Those two things are my picks, but there's so many others.
Love it.
Yeah, as a developer, I think I want the interactions with media to be more reliable. Like, I remember like a couple of years ago, we were building this app that would take pictures and video, and we wanted to do like inline editing for the pictures and like add the silly filters and things that were happening on native apps, and that was not easy at all. And also like controlling the video quality and how things were being reproduced and recorded was really, really hard. And again, like, there's work in this space that it's been doing right now, but like, that's on my wish list.
Yeah, I definitely, that should be much better today. Like, we have a team working on such things. They have at least like made like funny hats demo apps where they're painting on top of it. And like, there's a lot of settings with media. I think like there's also like there's so many things that I want us to do most like what native can do. Of course, the big challenge is like getting it standardized, getting the APIs good. We can just like do an API and then like deprecate and do another API. Like, it's sticking around forever on the web. So like, we need it to be high quality. Plus, like, the web, like these apps are not like going through an app store and a review process and the like. So we need to make sure that this is safe. People visit a lot of websites every day. So like, the drive-by web, you don't want like, I went into this website, was trying to steal my credentials, and it accesses my USB devices or my local socket. So we need to come up with like new ways to keep it private and secure. So sometimes it could be like show a dialogue, but if you keep on showing a dialogue, explaining to people, maybe it's not easy for anyone to understand. Like my mom, what is a USB device? What do I do here? And if they see that too much, they get like fatigue. So they'll just like ignore or always accept, which would be terrible for privacy and security. So it's really, there's a lot of challenges, but like look through the Fugu tracker. There are a lot of great things. I would love us to be able to create, like, I look at the apps, like I would like to want to build like a web editor. Why can't I do something like that on the web? So that is something that probably requires me to work with a lot of data. So like the file system access API to getting like do it local, the web codec API. So I don't need to hand roll my own like software codecs or decoders, which I can with WebAssembly, but it's really big and expensive. But I can use the hardware that's there. Like CPUs today support a lot of codecs. It's part of the chipset. So like getting access to what's actually there. Something else is like a lot of CPUs or like SOCs today, they have a lot of cores. So like even like phones, like 8 core, like, and you see desktop machines with a 32 cores or something like that. Like, but can you use them on the web? Yeah, you're running a lot of different tabs, and like, okay, Chrome can use different processes, but like, I'm not using a lot of different tabs at the same time. Most of them are gonna be sleeping to like save battery. But like, how do I like take advantage of like multi-cores to build like better experiences, especially for something like a video editor where you want like to do some processing in one core while you're still like editing in the main thread. And like JavaScript is not a multi-threaded language, so how do we do that on the web? So that I think is very interesting. Also getting like more access to telemetry. System have a lot of telemetry today, like a CPU, whether it's going into like speed mode or sleeping or and whatnot, and being able to like react on that. So like if I'm doing, a friend of mine, a coworker at Google, is working on compute observers. So they're having the use case, you're doing like a video chat, and like the system has no idea like whether this is running on a very slow laptop or a high-end one. And maybe if it's just like pushing the system to the limit, it's going into like swapping or like throttling, and the experience become worse. So it would be better for them to know that, well, you're almost about to get throttled. Okay, I'm gonna turn off those fancy hats animations, because it's better like to actually show the experience than like frozen faces and an unresponsive mouse. So like getting access to more telemetry, what's going on, so people can also better like performance test the systems and react to things at live, like in real time, something I think would be very interesting. It may be also a bit advanced, but I think like web apps today, if you want to build that core experience, like not for all apps, but like for some major apps and games, like you need that kind of info.
Those are all really, really great ideas. And I wonder if, do you think maybe we would start to see maybe some of those ideas start to take fruit in the next year? Is this like the year for some of those ideas to really, start to be realized? Adriana, do you think so?
I think some of the ones that we mentioned, yes, they are on roadmaps and people are all working on like native sockets. But the ones about telemetry and more access to the CPU ins and outs, like I haven't heard anything on the roadmap, but I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you, like some of these things are also being worked on, but things take time. Like you got to get the right ideas. You got to get through like lots of different eyes and security reviews and standards reviews to get there. And then even when it lands, like it's gonna take years before people actually ship products using them. So like we have file system access today. So yeah, there's some demos out there, but I haven't seen like a Visual Studio Code using it instead of being an Electron app. But like maybe that would appear in a couple of years, because like those are big apps and it's like a major change the whole app to like move from something like Electron to an actual progressive web app with a service worker. But I think that I definitely hope that companies are planning, and I'm hearing whisper that is happening. So I'm positive.
Whispers from who?
I cannot tell you. It's
secret whispers. If they weren't whispers, they'd be saying them out loud on Twitter or something.
Henrik, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I want to, if I can, I would just want to comment a little bit on the security bit. So sure. A lot of the objections for from Mozilla and Apple about, adding these more capabilities to the web is around the idea of security and privacy. And there's a fundamental flaw with that theory, in my opinion, which is that if they don't add it, people aren't going to do these things. Well, they're just going to do it in less secure ways. So, the web runs in a sandbox. It's very well tested sandbox to try to make sure that, malicious stuff can't just kind of break out of that sandbox and all of a sudden have full system access. So like there's all kinds of, and not only that, they have the ability to update and patch things very, very quickly if there is something that is a problem. So there's that. But also, like, a lot of these companies that are trying to that have built a web application, they built a PWA that then at some point in the process runs into an API that they need, that they don't have, then they're stuck like me, throwing up an Electron app. You're not going to throw away your whole code base. You're going to just like run it in Electron and then add that API to your JavaScript so that you can actually do those things. Like, so all you're doing is you're going to expose whatever capability exists to Node to your JavaScript that's running in the web page. And that's not a great idea. Like, from a security perspective, that's like way worse, right? Because now you've bundled a specific version of Chrome that may later discover that there's some, like, major vulnerability, and there's no quick way to update it. And when you do, then you got to go through the whole app distribution process to actually get it out there and hope that somebody's going to go download your thing. Like, it's not more secure. Like, people are going to build these things anyway by adding it to the web and kind of doing it in this more standard permission-based way, rather than just, asking somebody to install a native app and then doing it without asking them. I don't see how one is less secure than the other. Like, I would much rather see a really robust permissions-based, browser capability system than have everybody go around it. I mean, even something like CORS, it's like the web holding its own, it's like the web controlling its own impulses, right? Like, nobody loves CORS, but it helps protect users from, so the browser is trying to protect users from people doing bad things. Well, if you install a native app, I can just go hit whatever I want on your local network without asking you. So, like, security, it's more secure, it's more private. Is it really? Like,
But they're being audited, the native apps.
Yeah, of course every line is being reviewed, as we saw with TikTok and iOS. It's absurd, right? Like, it's better to not trust them to begin with. So the whole idea of, like, running native code that has, and granted there's sandbox and permission stuff there now as well, but, like, that's not the default. The default was, we're going to make sure it's safe and then let you run it. But the web by default says it's probably not safe. So let's make sure that the browser protects the user as much as possible. And I think that's just a better model. So anyway, that was not the original question. I'm going to stop talking now.
No, that's totally okay. This is the kind of thing that we want to know about and we want to hear as people entering into the space. But we're coming up on time, guys, and we have thoroughly gone through the path of PWAs, and I'm pretty sure that we still have so much more to unpack as we start to implement it and use it in our regular day-to-day. But I want to thank you all for joining me today on this episode of Build IT Better, or Build It Better, for those of you that like to say that better. You guys have a great one.
Hey, thanks for having us.
You too.
Take care.
All right.